Howdy folks, today on the bench we have junk. I bought this off a friend of mine quite affordably, and today we're gonna just have a look at it. Now the reason I bought it, because it probably looks like a piece of junk to you, but if you are a valve amp or tube amp enthusiast, you will look at this as a treasure trove. That's not easy to say. Treasure trove. Now this is an old radio. You can see the tuning cap here. You can see these old boxes here, which I believe are part of the radio. Okay. Now I think there's a filter cap there. Not interested in any of that stuff. I'm interested in little things like this. Okay, light bulb. You know, the holder. Okay, so obviously the light bulb is gone. It's actually sitting here, but the holder perfectly fine. Okay, so great. I mean, you look at the front cover of this, you know, I don't know what's happened with this. I don't know what's, you know, and there's this needle here, and I think it's stuck anyway. It's not actually even moving. Well, it is. It's very hard to move. But you know, the pot here, the shaft is broken. This is a different pot. The good news, I mean, even though this is cracked as well, it's obviously been ground. This is a pot that still works, and this one here is a pot with a switch, so it's an on-off switch as well as a pot that can be salvaged. That's just the little basic things. Now the tube sockets, you might want to salvage them, maybe not. They are pretty old. They'll be pretty delicate. What else? Well, obviously, you know, this power transformer here, and it looks like it's what does it say? It just says iron core on it. Okay, but it's a big one. I mean, look at the size of it. It's pretty hefty, and that's half of it. The other half is inside the chassis. I'm going to turn this around in a moment. We're going to have a look at it. Another thing to note, there's also another two light sockets here. There's another one here to illuminate the face, so that light bulb seems to be intact. Whether it works or not is a different story. And there's another one up here as well. So these are all little tiny parts we can salvage, you know, pots, light sockets, transformer, obviously power transformer. And one of the reasons I like this power transformer, so this transformer can run, what were the tubes that were in here? A 5Y3 GT, so it's got our 5-volt filament, two 6V6s, so it's got our 6.3 volt for the heaters for that. And it had two other smaller tubes, I think a 6C7 or 6N7 and something else. They were small, sort of 9-pin ones. Now, sadly, when I turn this around, you're going to notice. Does anyone try and guess what these are? Yeah. Unfortunately, it got a little bit damaged in transit, and you know, you look at this, it's a piece of junk, right? Well, there's parts in here that I want to salvage, so I'm going to show you the underside, and I'll show you the problem I found from damage from transport. Alrighty, straight off the bat, you can see an issue here. Now, at first, when I saw this, I thought, oh man, the output transformer's broken, it's stuffed. Then I looked at this and kind of thought, hang on. First of all, is this standard? Now, looking back at it more, it feels like it is, although the green plastic is a bit of a throw-off. So this might have been put in at a later date. However, upon further inspection, I realized when I pulled this out that it's a choke. It's not an output transformer. Now that's a good thing, because A, chokes are cheap, B, chokes are easy to repair. Now all that's happened really is that the core, the bottom of the core here, has popped out. How that happened? Well, in transit, the nut and bolt that were holding this side, let me frame this correctly. The nut and bolt, or the screw and nut, sorry, holding this side, fell out, causing this to basically fall apart. End of the world? No. Easy fix? Yes. A little bit of a pain to fix? Also yes. Anyway, I'm going to do that right now, but the thing is I'm going to pull this apart anyway. So, you know, what's the point? I can mount this somewhere else. Or maybe just leave it there and maybe just remove it for now so I can work on the rest of the amp. Because right now, let me just sort of tuck this in a bit so we can have a look at some other stuff. We're going to go through the amp and see what's salvageable. Now, you might look at this automatically and start thinking, wow, look at all these vintage parts. You know what? I'm not even going to bother testing them. Maybe these resistors, because they all look in really good condition. Normally these resistors drift, these little brown resistors that you find in a lot of vintage gear, they drift. So I'm going to be measuring those and comparing them to the colors, the color code on here, to determine whether or not they're fairly okay to use or not. You can salvage these. You know, some of these are 3 watt, 5 watt resistors that are going to be fantastic. What I won't salvage, because it's a ticking time bomb if I do, are these caps here, these 8 microfarad caps. There's another filter cap down here. There's one there. And I haven't really gone through and studied this circuit, nor am I really interested. I'll tell you what else I'll be salvaging. These are shielded cables. These are going to be fantastic for audio and things like that. These caps here, I'm not going to bother. You know, again, even if they test good, the caps in this are at a minimum 40 to 50 years old. Am I going to bother trying to fix this or no, I'm not. I bought this purely to salvage parts. Here's the back of the pot that's also a power switch. So you have your I can't really turn that well. There we go. Can't really turn that too well with without a knob on there. But, you know, you can hear that click. We'll test that to make sure it's okay. Now, the good news about this power transformer here is not only can I just rip this out and put it aside, or leave it in here and just convert this chassis to a guitar amp. The benefit of this transformer here is it's actually got markings of what each terminal does. How amazing is that? Saves the guesswork of me pulling this apart or noting down with little bits of sticky tape, which I have forgotten at times. I've been excited to salvage parts and then completely forgotten. Pulled it apart and then gone, oh, what's that transformer do? I don't know. Yeah, guess what? This is written down for us. Fantastic. And you can see here, 5 volt, 2 amp. You know, it's even giving us the rating here. What's that? Maybe 265 on the secondaries, 240 on the primaries. So it's an Australian transformer, and that's great. This is an old radio that was made in Australia. A lot of these caps are Australian made. Let's have a look at one right now and see if we can find it. So let's look up in here. We'll see this one here, the Ducon. Any Ducon caps are Australian made. Now let me see if I can focus in on this. But basically, what do we got here? Condenser Limited Australia and NT is what it says on there. I don't know if you can see that. Ducon Condenser Limited Australia and NZ, New Zealand. Okay, and this amp is full of caps like that. Unfortunately, they are all going to go into the bin. They are all useless. So looking at the circuit here, now this is the tough part, okay, because it's always a challenge to trace out a circuit and understand what's going on. So what I'd like to do is generally come down here to the bottom where you have your power transformer here, and you know, you've got, this is what's your basically your input, your voltage input, your mains voltage input. This little red wire, and then it goes to here, which is your 240 volt. Okay, the 240 volt is also jumpering across here to this switch. Okay, and then it's coming out the other side with these brown wires, and that's going to the power cord. Okay, so what's happening, we've kind of followed it in reverse. Oh, hang on a sec. So that, I just realized that is not the power input. What that is, because the power cord's here, so power's coming into here, going up this brown wire into our switch, coming out of our switch with this little flimsy wire, going to the power transformer and basically conducting. Power transformer. Now this secondary, I guess this little plug here is maybe external power going to something else, another device. Anyway, we'll leave that alone because we don't care about that, but interesting to note. So that's going into the power transformer. That's providing our input voltage. Hooray. Okay, looking at the rest of the power transformer, we can see these yellow wires here. Let's get this brown mains wire out of the way. We can see this yellow wire here. There's two yellow wires, and it says, what does that say? Looks like it says 5.4 volt, maybe? It's hard to see, isn't it? 5.4. 3 amp. I'm going to say that. Now let's follow this wire. Okay, it goes up here to... Looks like it's just lighting up some... Well, you know what I'm going to be doing is snipping out a lot of this stuff, so it's not like it's a major issue to trace out and follow. But looks like some of these yellow wires are basically our heaters. Okay, something to note as well is that the heater wires are not wound. They're just hanging out all through the amp. That yellow wire, so you can trace it, it's just a single yellow wire, not doing much. Okay, so that's interesting. Now I'm trying to figure out if this socket here is our rectifier tube or this one up here. Now it appears that this one up here has our 5 volt. Sorry, this one here, framing. I'm looking at the amp rather than through the camera. That goes up here, and that looks like our 5 volt line, pin 8 and pin 2. Okay, and then we have what's that? 1, 2, 3. Pin 4 and pin 6 are the purple side, which is getting our high voltage, which in this case appears to be what's that say? 285 and 285. So, you know, we're talking 400, 500 plus volts here. So this may well be the rectifier tube. The other 3 tube sockets down here, 1, 2, and 3, well, I'm going to guess that these 2 down here, let me zoom out, these 2 down here are probably the 6v6s. This one here, I'm not sure what it is. It could be another preamp tube. It could be like a 6SN7 or no, 6SC7. I forget which one has the dual triodes for phase inverter. That's what that maybe looks like. And then we have a couple of Novel 9-pin sockets here, and they're for some other tubes that I don't know about. So the thing is that you could sit here and guess what sort of tubes go in here. There are no markings on this amplifier at all for any tubes. I know it's 6v6 powered, and I know it's 5Y3 rectified. That is all I know. So guess what? It is time to get the clippers out. Alright, so I've removed the filter choke that was broken, and I've kind of reassembled it back together. Obviously, part of this assembly is also that it sits next to the chassis and presses down, so it kind of assembles itself when you mount it. I can't read how many millihenries it is. maybe 10 or 100, hard to say. I'll have to see if I can measure it, but it says 250 ohm. At least we'll be able to plug in our multimeter and measure the resistance of that to make sure it's okay. So let's try that now. All right, so I've got the multimeter probes connected, and my multimeter is saying that it is, let me get a good connection on here. If I can. 281 ohm. That's pretty close to 250. Doesn't need to be exact. The more important thing is the millihenries. But look, this amp is a 6v6 amp, so if you're going to be using it, you could use it on a 6v6 circuit in push-pull, and should be okay. So that's testing out okay to me. There's no shorts, there's no issues. So let's carry on with salvaging more stuff out of this. Alright, so as you can see, the chassis is looking pretty bare right now. Almost everything is out. I've got a couple of things left. Some of these hard to reach, capacitors and all that. I don't really care about those because they're caps. They're probably ruined anyway. But the next thing I'm going to take out is this this big grounding plane with these shielded wires. I mainly want the shielded wires. I am going to unsolder the grounding plane, but I'll probably do that at a later date. Next thing I'm going to do is, after that, is go through these components. Now, all these capacitors here, they're junk. They're just going to go in the bin. I'm not even going to waste my time testing those. But the resistors, and there's about 20 or 30 of them in this pile, I am going to go through those and measure each one and make sure they're okay. Because if they're in spec, we can still use them. If they're out of spec, we'll chuck them in the bin. Then there's all these wires here. So a lot of this is all high voltage wire. Even though it's quite thin, it is a high grade wire. You have to remember with the most tube amps, apart from the heaters, which are running at a couple of amps, the actual circuit itself is only pulling a few milliamps, oftentimes less than 100. So I'm going to keep a lot of those wires, but we're nearly there. I've just fired up the soldering iron to unsolder some of this off the ground plane, so you can kind of see if I duck in underneath here. Actually, it's a bit hard to tell, but okay, so here's one of them coming up here. So there's kind of a big sort of network of ground planing, and it comes out here, this cable here. So going to slowly dismantle that, and then we're pretty much done. And finally, here it is, the bare chassis. I'll start from the bottom here in the power section, work my way up. So I'm going to do a few more things. I'm not going to really pay much attention to recording these. Basically drill out the rivets that are holding in these valve sockets. Or I might just keep them in there because they're perfectly fine. The only thing I'll probably have to do is run a new ground plane to ground all these valve sockets off. Because you can see they've kind of got this bakelite or mica sort of material. I don't think it's plastic. It could be fiberglass or it could be masonite or who knows. The thing is that they're actually good sockets. There's nothing wrong with them at all. So I may go ahead and reuse them just to keep this thing as vintage looking as possible. And you can see a big gaping hole here. That's basically where the tuning wheel went. The pulley here that went up on the inside. I have taken off that whole mechanism, which is this thing here. I'm going to take off this tuning capacitor as well, this adjustable capacitor. I believe that's what they are. Yeah, someone might have a use for that. I don't. The useful things I have are right here. Power transformer. The output transformer is actually on the speaker that I have with this. It's an old little 15-20 watt 12-inch roller speaker. So it looks like maybe this came out of a small jukebox, or well, I know, well, it would be actually it would be a radio, it wouldn't be a jukebox because it has the tuning stuff. These are all the little frequency caps. I pulled one apart to sort of see what's inside because I've never played with vintage radios before, so basically it looks like some sort of crystal set thing going on here. If you've played around with vintage radios, by all means comment below and tell me what this is supposed to be. I was thinking of keeping this can to be able to fit modern capacitors inside and use these so I could mount it in here epoxy it down or something using these pins sticking out here, and these, well, it can go back in the chassis because if you look here on the cans, there's these screws riveted on, and I have all the nuts and the washers down here, so I could effectively, and then maybe screen print if I want to go that far, or maybe just grab a black texture and write down what the values are on here. But I could use this as kind of a vintage looking capacitor, and then on the inside chuck in a couple of modern capacitors, because as we all know, if you've watched these videos, whether you work on valve amps or not, modern capacitors are much smaller than they used to be. That's why I'm keeping those. This is the pile of everything out of the amp. I haven't thrown anything away. There is a sticker on here. Let's see if we can read what it says. It says Selects Decal Proprietary Limited up the top here. And it says number 6. This instrument was manufactured under license granted by Australian Radio Technical Services and Patents Co-Proprietary Limited in respect of patents and controlled by it for the reception in the Commonwealth of Australia and such territories as may from time to time be administered under mandate by the said Commonwealth of sound broadcast by wireless, but only for private or domestic use and not for operation for any public or commercial or revenue earning purposes. NBA post office license is necessary. Interesting. So anyone here in Australia who's maybe messed around what appears to be maybe some sort of ham radio thing, I don't know. Maybe this was a transmitter and not a receiver. I don't know. Look, there is a serial number here again. If you guys know what this means, let's focus in on that. Please, camera, focus. There we go. Looks like what's that, a G? A C? No, it looks like a G. B? CB or GB? That's hard to tell. I don't want to lick my finger because this amp is so grotty. I probably should have worn gloves, but look at my hands. That looks like it might be a CB 61587. That's, well, hey, maybe this is an old CB radio, an old CB valve radio. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, not really any other stickers or, whoop, there's a stray washer. But, hey, I was looking for that. Nothing else up here. No one here but us chickens. Interesting. Look, that concludes the end of this part of the video. I'm going to continue with a part 2 because it looks like this video may be a long process. Essentially, what we're going to do is turn this thing into a guitar amp. So, look, focus in on that. Most people, and rightfully so because they work so well, most people will go ahead and clone something like a Princeton. You know, something with 6V6s. I could go 6L6s, but this power transformer is not big enough. Look, the voltage it's going to be putting out, the high B plus, is probably not enough. So I think we'll go with 6V6s. I think we'll go something with maybe like a Supro circuit. Maybe like a 1624T. Before they went to the 6873 power tubes. They were originally with 6V6s, I think. We're starting from scratch here, and the next thing you're going to see is in the next video, this will be clean, and I'll start to research some tubes to use for this new amp. So thanks everyone for watching. This has been an epic video so far. There's been a lot of stuff, and this has taken me a fair bit of time, you know. You don't just rip things out. You know, I'm salvaging stuff to keep. Thanks again for watching, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. There's lots more to come on this, and I'm really looking forward to completing this and hearing and seeing the end result. Thanks again, and see you guys soon.